When the I am dissolves, an eternal beingness emerges. This quality of being is vital, pure, fresh, and immaculate. The darkness of our personality disappears in the light of our individuality. Jai Prabhuji, last class we spoke about the personality. And we got a full description from Prabhuji and analysis of what it consists of. We saw that the personality is a collection of automatic reactions, different ways that we reacted to life from our very childhood. Usually the most profound are the earliest experiences and deepest experiences that continue to mold our life, and then throughout our lives we continue and accumulate automatic reactions, which are ways that we found psychologically to react to situations, and we preserve the patterns as a mechanism. Instead of every time figuring out, we just preserve the same patterns, and they are now constituting who we are, our personality. So this is one aspect that we learn from Prabhuji. It's a collection. What collection means? It's not just one automatic reactions, but all kind of automatic reactions put together that constitute us. In addition, the personality, also Prabhuji told us, is a collection of masks. Again, we see that it is a collection, not just one mask, but a collection of different ways that we found to look, to appear, to present ourselves, to pretend to be. How did we come up with all these masks? We imitated. We human beings come to this world, we observe, we look, and we pick and choose masks. And then they become us, these masks. So we have different masks that we accumulated in our lives, we adapted, and now we use them, and Prabhuji says we have particular mask to each occasion, to each situation. We pull the mask and we pretend to be according to a particular mask, or wear a particular mask, appear in a particular way. And also Prabhuji told us this personality is a role that we play, which means it's a character that it's not us. Why do we need a character? Because this world, all other people are a stage that we need to cope with still. To this day, we are coping constantly, day by day, with society, with different frames, different situations in life, at work, at home, etc., all kind of situations. We are coping with the scenario that are other people. This is the stage. The stage are other people. And we appear according to a particular role that we adapted. We are a character. And this we know even not when we tap into the transcendental nature and can observe and see it clearly. But even us, when we go home, before we go to sleep, close the door of our room, we know that this is not exactly who we are. We know that we are not expressing ourselves fully, accurately, faithfully, for different ways and in different ways. But there is difference. This difference is already some conflict that exists in us as personalities. Of course, also what we mentioned earlier, that the masks are a collection and that the automatic reactions are a collection, means we are not one thing, like the individual that Swami are going to visit, but we are fractured. We are a lump of all kind of elements put together, and this is why we experience conflict in the level of the personality. We don't always feel the same and think the same. We have all kind of angles, and we feel this incoherence at times between us and ourselves. Because again, it's not something that springs from inside outside, but something that is mechanic, that is a collection. And today, now, what we just read, we are getting a description of the individuality. And I feel if we had any doubt that maybe this is my individuality, that this is how I am this is really my true nature, it's not a personality, it's not automatic. When Prabhuji gives us a description of the individuality, it's so clear, it's so evident that once we will tap into our individuality, we will know. There will be no questions there, that now the individuality is manifested. And this is very important. I think it's a very important tool for us if you want to work on ourselves and be able to recognize and start to observe the personality, to recognize how do we feel when we act out of the individuality, or how will we feel when we tap into our individuality. It actually reminded me, the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, we get a description of the Kauravas that were the enemies of Arjuna and of the Pandavas, and all the noise and all the politician attitude and the fear, and you feel it in the description. And then we get a description, and on the other side, the Pandavas blew their transcendental conch shell, and you feel the change in the consciousness. And I feel this is what we are feeling here in this transition. We got a description of this personality that is important, that it's relevant to each and every one of us. And we are not condemning the fact that we are personalities. The opposite. We want to observe it. We want to study it. We want to face it. We want to observe it as much as we can. And this isolate ourselves from the reactiveness, of course. But we must keep clear the difference in these levels of consciousness, when it's the personality and when it's the individuality, when it's the role that we play, it's our coping mechanisms, and when it's the true nature, it's our home, it's who we are, it's when we will know that we have arrived and this is our place. It's when the observation will happen between who we really are and what is just some image that we pretend to be or that we are forced to be helplessly. We will have this clear distinction. So I feel it's a great help, and it's very important for us to recognize the difference and be aware of it in our work with ourselves. So Prabhuji tells us, once the I am dissolves, he will be receiving a different name for the personality. It is called I am. When this I am dissolves, the personality is everything that we can say after I am, that we usually say after I am, right? I am like this, and I am like this, and I am like that, and I used to be like this, I want to be like this, I am not like this, etc., etc., etc. All this, lots of words and narratives and ideas and images are not who I am, are the personality, are how we think that we are, as Prabhuji says. It's not who you really are, but what you think that you are. This is not who we really are. When this, all that we think that we are, dissolves, who we really are emerges, and what Prabhuji tells us about it. Eternal beingness emerges. It means it's evident. Prabhuji clearly here gives us a description. We said that in Prabhuji's contents, we often get descriptions from his experience. Kindly, we said the experience cannot be verbalized, but there are words that indicate, that are coming from it, and that can connect us with this level of consciousness to some extent, of course, only. Prabhuji says it emerges. There's no questions about it. We see here the direct knowing and clarity that will be once we will tap into the individuality. What emerges? Beingness. What is beingness? Existence emerges. We know that something exists, right? What is existence? Something exists. No, Prabhuji says existence exists. Not just it emerges. It's evident. This is what will happen when we tap into the individuality. And then he further describes this quality of being. It has a quality. So it's beingness, that emerges. What's the qualities of this being? It's vital, it's pure, fresh, and it's immaculate. For sure, we cannot say about the personality that it's immaculate. So clearly we are getting the distinction. Finally, Prabhuji says we will feel that we are at home. It's fresh, it's pure, it's immaculate. There is nothing more that needs to happen. There is no problem to be solved, etc. And in its light, Prabhuji tells us, of this experience, the darkness of the personality disappears. Once the individuality will start to shine, the personality will have to subside and subside. All the mass, all the collections, automatic reactions and collection of mass and all the game play that we play in the stage of society, they will subside, they will lose their power thanks to the light of the individuality. Okay, so we get here a lot of clarity, and I would like us to pause in this interesting term that Prabhuji brings here of beingness. What is beingness? And we are going to look at this term in two of Prabhuji's books. One belongs to the Eastern thought and another to the Western thought. So we can see how Prabhuji speaks about the same state of being in different languages. And as we said, Prabhuji speaks the same truth, we can say, the same message always. He speaks out of this experience, evidently. We see it very evidently in different languages. And the beauty of it, that we can see that really these languages also talked about similar things in different ways. And it can, of course, also enrich us intellectually, but also point us to the essence, to what is most important, to the fundament that whoever gave a lot of importance, thought, time, effort to question into it and to go as deep as possible, got to similar foundation. That is the only foundation that is this beingness. So we're going to visit first Advaita Vedanta book when Prabhuji speaks about Sat. In the Advaita Vedanta, we are calling the one nature, the undivided one nature that is all-pervading, which is the reality, which is the only God, which is us, which is everything, that is one, that is undivided, has no qualities, has no time. Brahman, right? Brahman is a name that we give to what cannot be named, to the one. And this Brahman has qualities, and are Sat, Chid, and Ananda, existence, knowledge, and bliss. That I believe we can recognize all of them in this description. We see eternal beingness emerges. We see here the Sat, or existence, beingness, and we see the clear knowledge about it, which is Chid, which is, it emerges, it's evident. There is knowing that, there is knowing of the existence. And we definitely see also the bliss. It is fresh, it's pure, it's immaculate. So let's read from Prabhuji's Advaita Vedanta about Sat. Brahman does not exist, but it is existence itself, or Sat. The stages of Vedanta define reality in terms of perpetuity. If something is subject to change, or if its manifestation is temporary, they do not consider it to be real. We cannot clearly define an entity that at some moment is a cat, then a chicken, then an elephant, and finally turns into a turtle. We cannot consider entity real if we see it for a second and then it vanishes. For example, the reality of a dream appears for a time and then vanishes forever. It is an illusion because it has a beginning and an end. What is real exists yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Only what is immutable can be considered real. Therefore, since it is absolute immutability, Brahman is the only reality. Brahman is the screen on which the game of life, or lila, is projected. Everything we see in the movie exists because the screen is present. Brahman is adhisthana, or the substratum that lies behind the relative reality of names and forms. Advaita Vedanta, Be the Self, by Prabhuji. So Prabhuji explains to us, in the light of the Vedantic view, with regard to this aspect of sat, or existence, that anything that has a beginning and an end cannot be considered ultimately real. It is maybe relatively real. We are not dreaming or imagining. We spoke about it also previously. But this is relative existence. It's temporary existence. It has nothing to compare with the ultimate real, that is eternal. And notice when Prabhuji gives here the description of eternal beingness emerges, there is also recognition that it's eternal. There is also knowing that it's eternal. So once we tap into the individuality, we will know it's eternal. Everything comes together, and this is what the rishis tell us is the only reality that we can consider reality, because it's eternal. If something starts and ends, again, it has some relative existence, but not ultimate existence. And now we'll take another angle. As we said, in Prabhuji's later works, when he spoke about Western philosophy, of course, particularly in the context of the term of being, we will visit Heidegger, that is so significant in Prabhuji's works, because Martin Heidegger, a German philosopher, dealt extensively with the being. This, we can say, was his main occupation. And Prabhuji gives Heidegger a lot of room, because it's a great language to speak about this beingness. Heidegger went deep into this beingness. And let's read and try to understand. Before we will read, actually, we will introduce a term that Martin Heidegger used, that Prabhuji uses it here, that it's Dasein. Dasein, in German, it's either being here or being there. Here Prabhuji speaks about it as being there, but in other places Prabhuji does indicate that it can also be being here. This concept of Dasein, the understanding of it, is closely related to the topic that we are speaking about, which is being. Dasein is being there. Heidegger says this is who we are. Before we are a person, before we are thinking, before we are reacting, before we have animalistic needs, we are here. Before the time, before all experiences, before anything that we know, we are here. And Heidegger says this is the most important in us that we overlook as human beings. We don't give it a lot of importance. For us, being is something is. No, Heidegger says more important than something is the fact that it is. More important than we are like this or like that, or we're like this, or we're born at this time, etc., is that we are. And he says this is the most important experience also of us that are not aware of the being. So according to Heidegger, Dasein can be authentic, which means we are aware of this importance of being, and we have a relationship with being. Prabhuji soon will read his words when he explains Heidegger. That might be very difficult to understand directly, but with Prabhuji it's easier to understand, I believe. He explains to us that Heidegger speaks about the relationship with the being, the openness to the fact that we exist and to this being, and Dasein can be inauthentic. We didn't even think about it. We will never think about it. It's irrelevant for us. We are busy with our life, with our work, family, etc., etc. This is inauthentic Dasein. Still, Heidegger says it's the foundation. The most important experience is the fact that it's here. Being here. So let's read. This is from Prabhuji's book, The Symbolic Turn. Ultimately, Rationality constitutes only a derivative expression of a more basic and fundamental principles that pervade human existence. For example, in its connatural relationship to being. In the context of Heideggerian philosophy, especially in the work Letter on Humanism, a unique perspective on the essence of Dasein, or being there, is highlighted. Heidegger argues that what truly defines Dasein is not its animalistic nature or its rational capacity, but rather its relationship with being. That is to say, Dasein's inherent openness toward being. For Heidegger, this connection with being is far more fundamental and primordial than the characteristics of being animal or rational. Okay, so Prabhuji tells us, ultimately, rationality constitutes only a derivative expression of a more basic and fundamental principles that pervade human existence. For example, in its connatural relationship to being, and then he will use Heidegger. Prabhuji tells us the fact that we think is a derivative expression of much more fundamental aspects of us, such as this of being, that we exist. This is more basic, this is more fundamental. It is impossible to manifest individuality without first overcoming conditioning. So after we got the beautiful and inspiring description about the individuality, Prabhuji tells us it is impossible to jump into this experience without overcoming our conditioning, which is where we find all the religious paths that help us to purify, to cultivate our better qualities, etc., etc., Brahminical qualifications, etc. Our conditioning are very strong, rooted, they are controlling us, and they do not allow the individuality to live, to be expressed. We cannot just jump into the individuality. And in most cases, there will be process of overcoming the conditioning, of observing ourselves, of studying ourselves, of disassembling rooted patterns in order to allow what we really want, who we really are, to be expressed, to be free. On one hand, the individuality is one and the same. The experience on which Prabhuji speaks about is common to all individuals that transcended the egoic phenomenon, that transcended the personality, and that manifested to us divine wisdom in different ways, in different languages that we mentioned many times. The experience is one. This beingness is one. The knowledge, Satchidananda, is one. Brahman is one. The transcendence is one. It's undivided. It's one complete. This is why it's individual. And from there, these individuals communicate and conduct. Yet the expression is unique, different, and particular to each and every person. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks with Arjuna about the seva dharma, one's particular duty. After Arjuna explained to Krishna why he's not supposed to fight in this war, he's supposed to go and meditate, forget about his duty, not obey Krishna, not do his duty, which is to serve Yudhishthira, not kill his enemies that chased after him over and over and are still desiring to kill him. Arjuna now wants to go and meditate, and he gives a full speech with a lot of explanations that included the importance of the dharma, of the society, of the family, etc. We said Arjuna's speech was very noble and righteous, but it originated from the personality and from the fears and desires of the personality and the personal story, not out of occupation really with what is his duty, with what he is supposed to do. which will be Krishna's answer once Arjuna will be open to listen. At first, Krishna did not answer because Arjuna was very confident, but once Arjuna recognizes, I am actually an illusion and I would like guidance, Krishna is sharing all the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to us and to Arjuna about the importance of the duty, to perform our duty. And our duty, Krishna says, is unique. It is called in the Bhagavad Gita sādhanā. We are going to read it a few verses in this regard in a second. And the explanation of Krishna to Arjuna is that the performance of the sādhanā is not disconnected from the process of our self-realization. They are in fact one and the same. Performing of our duty is our karma yoga, our bhakti yoga, etc. And meditation and self-realization. This is really to meditate because we are disconnecting from the desires of the personality and serving the transcendence, serving what is right, serving what is transcendental to our personal egoistic story. What Krishna tells Arjuna is that the performance of his sādhanā, even if it's done unsuccessfully, even if Arjuna will fail, is much better than to engage in the dharma of another, in duty that has nothing to do with us. What is duty that has nothing to do with us? Everything that we receive from the outside and we did not evaluate and decided for ourselves. This is not our duty. How can we know what is our duty? If it's one in particular, no one can really tell it to us. Of course, the Guru always knows to direct us, but how can we know? The only way to be aware of our duty is to tap into the individuality. The significance of recognizing the individuality is also very relevant to the recognition of our duty, of what we are supposed to do, of what is true for us to do, of what is our path in life, of what is our way to serve the divine and communicate with the divine. This does not mean that we need to isolate from our current situation and detach from the world and now only think and meditate, exactly as in Arjuna's case. Maybe we are doctors, maybe we are family people, maybe we are businessmen, whatever we choose in life. But it is meaning that it needs to be our own truth, our own choices, and not reactions in order to satisfy our mind and to satisfy other people. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 3:35, Shreyan svadharmo vigunaha paradharmatsva nushtitat svadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though faultily, than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. And in Bhagavad Gita 18:47, Shreyan svadharmo vigunaha paradharma nushtitat svabhavaniyatam karma kurvana pnoti kilbisham. It is preferable to engage in one's own nature unsuccessfully than to follow another's duty and accomplish it. Performing actions according to one's nature, one never accumulates sin. And another very interesting point that Krishna tells us in this regard of the svadharma in the Bhagavad Gita, that even if we will not discover our individuality and not perform our duty in the service of the transcendence, in the service of our own truth, still we will act according to our unique and particular nature. Even if we will try to cover our unique and particular nature with the personality, with different ideas that we have in our head, with different images that we feel that we are forced to fulfill and to be, that have nothing to do with us, that are not our truth, and that are not our individuality or sādhanā, still Krishna says our sādhanā will be expressed. It's our nature. So we will act according to our nature this way or another. If we will discover our own conduct, our own sādhanā, and let it refine and be expressed and be conducted in the service of the transcendental and not of the egoic entity or the personality, of course our life will be much more fulfilled. But even if not, our nature will be evident. It will express through our efforts to control it or to hide it or to reject it. And of course our life will be much more fractured. There will be much less satisfaction, happiness, fulfillment, and inspiration to others because there will be lots of conflict. But our nature is already determined. Each and every one of us is different, is unique, and it's in our hands to discover what is really our nature, what is our way to conduct, to serve. We all want to serve others. We all want to be great family people and society people and workers, etc. What is our particular way to do it? We are going to do it differently. And so let's read the verse where Krishna speaks about this fact that either way we will be forced to act according to our unique and particular nature. Svabhava jena konteyani badhasvena karmana kartumne chasiyan muhat karishyasya vashopitat. You are conditioned to activities that are born of your nature, O son of Kunti. So that which you try to avoid doing out of illusion, you will eventually helplessly do. Individuality does not come from society, but from the depth of consciousness itself. As the name implies, it is indivisible and integral. It manifests as an expression of our intrinsic nature when the ego is transcended. So again we see in Prabhuji's words, the individuality will be expressed once we overcome the conditioning, once the ego is transcended. It is not coming from society, it is not coming from anything external, but it will be expressed naturally and evidently. It is individual, as we mentioned a few times, and integral. It's not a few components together, but it springs from inside, outside, like a flower. And in the words that we are going to conclude this class with, Prabhuji's word, he will speak about the aspect of chid, of the direct knowledge that is so significant. Only in this level we will know directly and intimately that this is us, that this is what we want to be, who we are supposed to be. We know it directly. There is self-knowledge. And again, here we see the aspect of chid that we mentioned earlier. When Prabhuji describes to us the eternal beingness emerges, we can witness that this is spoken out of direct knowledge. Prabhuji will say, this is the height of self-realization. What is the height? The height is also the foundation, is what we get. There is nothing underneath, that there is nothing above, that there is nothing further to be sought. In other words, we will know that we have arrived. We will know that this is our home. We will find end to all our questions and solutions and methods and ideas and conflicts and difficulties and distress. We have arrived. This will be evidence once our personality will be subsided, transcended, and the individuality will start to shine. Then we will start to have the conversation with the transcendence. In order to access individuality, self-knowledge is absolutely necessary. Those who have ceased to live from the experience of the ego can be unique and original. The awakening of our individuality is the height of self-realization. Jai Prabhuji.